President Donald Trump's Department of Education is cutting $400 million in funding for Columbia University. The reason? Anti-Semitism on college campuses has been a big problem. A lot of these pro-Hamas protesters. Now there's a Columbia student, Mahmoud Khalil. There's a big battle over his deportation. The Trump administration was going to deport him. It turns out he's actually here legally, and now he's kind of become a martyr. I want to talk about this with Sarah Roderick-Fitch. She is our regional editor for kind of part of the East Coast, the Mid-Atlantic, and the Northeast. Sarah, in your neck of the woods, are there a lot of anti-Semites? What's going on?
Well, you know what? Obviously, Columbia has been sort of the epicenter of everything that's happened going on there. I don't know if you say there's like a lot of anti-Semites, but
yeah, I'm being a little tongue in cheek, but this has been crazy. I mean, these campuses have been like the center of the anger. I mean, among a lot of the progressive wing of the Democratic Party about this American support for the war in Israel and the civilian deaths in Hamas, and it's come to a head on college campuses. What do you think about this issue? Has this been under the surface at these campuses for a while and it's just now coming out?
Absolutely. I mean, a lot of it comes from, if you go back and look at some of the funding sources where some of these schools are getting funding from, Qatar is a huge country, which that is basically not known for, they're not known to be pro-Israeli. And they have poured a lot of money into a lot of these schools, several billions of dollars, in fact, over the years, as well as Saudi Arabia and other countries that have done that. And then also you have to look at, some of the faculty members as well. I mean, there is this sort of, this drive for anti-Semitism, I guess, maybe sort of it's that whole victimization thing. They're looking for that ultimate victim and, sort of the Palestinians and whatnot. But I would say some of it goes back to the funding. I can't say, that's a direct link between the ideology, but it's also, I think, as well as I think it would be helpful to look at sort of some where these student visas and sort of the State Department has over the years have promoted.
Wait a minute. So I knew there was Chinese money going to schools. There's been writing about that, but we're taking money from like Qatar, and it's kind of amazing. Of course, there's going to be influence from that. I know I'm interrupting you, but I just want to bring it back to that point you just made a minute ago. We're taking money from other nations to educate American children. And it's not like Canadian or UK money. It's from all over. And these schools are very wealthy. And despite getting all this money, tuition just keeps going up and up. And then it turns out many of their students are not even American students. I think in Columbia's case, it's something like half or more than half are foreign nationals.
Yes.
That's kind of an incredible thing when we talk about, tuition prices are so high, students can't afford. I mean, many students dream about going to these kinds of Ivy League schools in one day. Well, it turns out many of the kids there aren't American. They've been imported in because they pay full tuition. And these great institutions of higher learning have kind of sold out a little bit for this overseas money. Am I being too mean?
No, I mean, I think there's some accuracy to that. And then also, it helps there's sort of the diversity. Hey, we have this, these international crowds. So it helps bump their numbers and whatnot. But yeah, there's a lot of, I mean, especially like from the Middle East, from different Gulf states, there's a lot of money that comes over. Qatar is the largest contributor. I don't know off the top of my head, but it's into the billions of dollars that they pour into various universities over here. And if you talk, we have to talk too, is do you think about like these endowments, these huge, massive endowments that some universities have. And there is some legislation that has been introduced to sort of tax them actually up to 21% of that endowment, their endowments, which would be, I think I figured it would have been like, I would be almost like if they were to do that, the max amount would be like $50 billion for American taxpayers if they tax these endowments. And I think it'd be interesting to sort of look at, maybe some of that foreign money, if they can tax some of that. I mean, I think some of that stuff would be.
How about this? You want to give free student loans? Why don't we tax the universities that are getting rich off of students, American students, and then send the money back to, if you need a funding source for student loan relief. I could get behind that. Is taxing.
Well, Harper just announced
free tuition,
$200,000 if your family makes under $200,000 or less, that you will get basically free tuition. If you make 100,000, you get free tuition, room and board, all of that money. And then there's also like you get like two $2,500 sort of like grants to just help you sort of transition or just help you there too. I think it's kind of interesting. Of course, they've got like a 3% acceptance rate. So good luck getting in there. But
yeah, I was accepted, but I decided, it really wasn't for me.
No.
I just went to Hillsdale. It's a better school. So
yeah, well, I went to West Illinois University, known as it's the Harvard of the West. I mean,
it is. I've heard that.
It is.
Is it a party school of the West also?
It is. It is the school that Harvard wishes they could be.
A lot of students are transferring, I've heard.
Yes. I have some friends who went to Harvard and they were like, hey, I wish I had gone to Western. I was like, who doesn't? That was
well, if you want the the Gulf State education, you can go to Columbia, I guess, apparently. I don't know if that's true.
Yeah, if you want to feel at home.
Well, and it's funny, the president of Iran, because, we're possibly about to go to war with Iran, Loki, and the president of Iran is talking about on Twitter, on X, about how the Muslim nations in that region, he used that word, not me, Muslim nations are uniting together against the U.S. and against Israel. And that he's basically saying the reason Trump is being so tough on him is that there is regional unity among the Muslim nations against the U.S. and against Israel. And so it's not us speculating at all to assume the politics of funders from this area. It's, when it comes to the issue of Israel, it's their own words of these nations saying that anti-Israel is just like one of the most agreed upon political points domestically for them. It's not a question.
It's being, to go back, I mean, like, there's a saying there in the Middle East. It's like it's in their mother's milk. The anti-Semitism, right? I mean, tell me, where's Iran? Where's Israel? Are they connected? Are they even close to each other? No.
They're close. They're not. They don't border each other. I mean, they're relatively close. Depends how you define it, maybe on the globe. But
like, if you look at it, I mean,
they're not border states. No,
they're not border states. What's the issue? But I mean, I think what Trump has kind of done is there's also another issue there. They hate Israel. But the fact is that Sunni and Shia, so Iran is Shia state and like Saudi Arabia is like the massive like Sunni state. Mm-hmm. Sunnis and Shias hate each other.
Right.
So Trump learned in his last administration with the Abraham Accords and everything like that to kind of work that, to kind of work them against each other, sort of pit them against each other. Cause that's almost as they don't hate each other as much as maybe they hate Israel, but it's close. It's fairly close. So yeah, they just kind of you just have to pit them against each other, really. I don't know about as much unity, honestly. Like,
I mean, I don't know that any American tries to dissect the Sunni Shia divide at their own peril, I think. But you're right that there's a lot going on there we don't understand. And Trump did make a lot of progress kind of miraculously. That was immediately undone by the Biden administration. But just to kind of wrap it up, I think we're running out of time, but just for the school issues, these schools have a ton of money. There's some big takeaways. They have a ton of money, enough that Harvard people can complain about funding and then all of a sudden they can get free tuition. So, they have huge endowments. They're getting a ton of money from questionable sources. And a lot of their students are not actually American students. I think a lot of people don't realize that, like a very high percentage are not American students. And then it turns out there's all these protests on campus that are not just pro-Palestine. I've watched video. I've interviewed students. These are anti-Israel, pro-Hamas. I mean, they believe that what Hamas did on October 7th was a good thing that was justified. I mean, not every single one of them, of course, but many of them. So it's important to note this is not just like, Israel is overreacting kind of protest. This is Hamas is right in what they did because they were rebelling against their captors.
And I mean, there was, I think it was one of the protests at George Washington University last year. There was a Hezbollah flag, right? And I think there was some Colombia, Hezbollah. Okay,
designated terrorist State Department.
Yeah, that's Iran. That's Iranian. That's Iranian. It's an Iranian backed thing. So you have that. You're like, come on. That tells you everything you need to know. That's just anti-Israeli. That's just, it's totally anti-Semitic. I mean, there's no way you cannot reconcile those two things.
Yeah. And it's, there is kind of a fine line of like, of saying that like, the nation of Israel and its leadership has gone too far and what it's done in Gaza. And I think you can have a really interesting conversation about that and civilian casualties. But that's not really what's happening. And the way you know that is these pro-Hamas protests started day one. They did not start after Israel's war went too far. They started as soon as October 7th happened. There was an outburst of support for it. This is like, so it's not as if October 7th happened, Israel killed a lot of civilians, and then there was outrage. That's not the timeline. The timeline is October 7th happened, tons of pro-Hamas support for that terrorist attack, and then Israel possibly, went too far, killed a lot of civilians, and now it's hurting their image and the war effort, support for the war.
Interesting. You never hear a question, you never hear them questioning this, is Hamas. That's a terrorist organization, right? They're causing this. They could say, hey, tomorrow or today, they could say, hey, we're going to stop doing this. And that would take care of the issues. Why isn't there anger towards Hamas for, bringing this into, they've been taking away so much money. You saw, I think it was the wife of the Hamas leader, right? In their tunnel, she's carrying her Birkin bag. Okay. That's like a $40,000. I don't know. I don't own Birkin bags, so I don't know, but I hear it's like 40 grand bags. Okay. Hi. So you're carrying around a 40,000. And then he was like carrying out these massive, like big TVs. Mm-hmm. Like it was, Black Friday or whatever. He's carrying these things through. So it's just, you have to question like, okay, they're getting their money. And they're basically kind of exploiting, the Palestinian people themselves, but nobody questions that. It's an interesting thing.
It is a very complicated, sad issue. Sarah, thanks for talking about it. I enjoyed our conversation.